everybody. This is like so. Anyway, we're gonna finish off with looking at some petroglyphs, hydroglyphs.
Yes, and there we have it. Oh dear, let me see what's going on. Now it's my time to have the screen share function and press there and screen share. Well, there, well, that's just a little intelligence test. I'm sorry it took so long. So we should be having the folder for pictures here. Did you hear about the double square?
I did hear about the double square.
Great. And here is I was touching upon in the old days really what are rock arts, and if we would watch this, this is actually a carefully cut stone, a very I will see how much I can maybe go around the edge of this stone, how carefully constructed this stone is. And mind you, if you go visit even in America or Asia or Europe or South America, these stones around you'll find as erected stones. Or if you're lucky, you will be in England, and England is the Italy and England is the so-called high culture. So they will say like, erected stones. Let me tell you, the archaeologists will say like, for sure it's Bronze Age, likely Stone Age. Then if you just skip a little bit around in the world over to Scandinavia, if you come to Denmark, they will say standing stones. They will say for sure Bronze Age, maybe not likely Stone Age, but could be. Now go over the Baltic Sea into Sweden, and they will find standing stones. They will say for sure Viking Age, maybe Bronze Age. Now skip even further away to Finland. They will see stones. They will say maybe it's ancient, but likely it could be maybe like Middle Age, or maybe Viking Age, or not likely at all Bronze Age. So and actually when you go around the world, and if you spend some time on internet, you'll find lots of sites engaged in visiting heritage sites, archaeological sites, erected stones, mounds, whatever, and you will find pictures from exactly all around the world, and quite the similar. I spent a lot of time with it, and here I'm speeding around my own home country, starting to get closer to my own forefathers, and my eyes is opening more and more, and I came to this period of my life where I visited more erected stones. And the more you do it, it's kind of like they're starting to talk to you, speak to you. And actually there are very keen shapes in many of these erected stones, manipulated and handled by craftsmen. And here, of course, you can see I painted in with chalk the different actual rock arts depicted in here. I showed this, and I made a very careful. Mapping on paper for this document. It's actually I had a plastic here, but these measures here I took to my friend that made the exact mappings out of stone monuments, and he started to see, well, do you see this? These four circles? They are actually very precise, and the edge of the I can show it here. The edge of the outer circle actually touches keenly and very precisely for some small features in the stone here. If I go really close in this picture, and if you go around here, here's my pointer on the computer circling, and I made a marker with a shark here. It's actually like you could put your little finger like in a small cup, and like in a small marking intended for some measurement. And actually, my friend that is so clever and keen to measure, he can see and he can find these small spots where they leave a clear message. It's from here. Are you blind? Come look here. Make your fingers come see what we did. And they will carve into these stones very precise, less than 1 part of 1,000 wrong in the measurement system they are using. And of course, the sacred systems they would use for measurement, of course, is the sacred mirror image of man. If you will come anywhere in the world, this is the space from the knuckle of your elbow, your arm flat on the table, and your 4 fingers. This is a special measurement for these 4 fingers. So that's the basis for the qubits, the so-called qubits. And lots of other things. The breadth. See, let's see here. The breadth of your thumb here is the actual thumb measurement, and they have made the foot is another measurement. And some will complain and say, "Oh, the French! Thanks for the French. They made our metric system. They are so genius. This and that and blah blah. Thank for them. We don't have so much problem." And there's lots of genius covered in and packaged into the metric system. But the English or ancient Roman or even ancient before them, based on the different measures of the human body and other things, is the basis for an ancient, very strict sacred measurement system you can find. And archaeologists will hate you if you talk about it. Just to say this word, if you say, the exact measurement of some parts of here and why you should work with it, they will flat out say, you said you find mathematics in here. You don't understand archaeology. You are wrong. Because they hate those subjects. It's not covered in their discipline, and they don't want to have anything with it to make their life more simple. And they only need the grant from money from the government, and they are, well, true parasites, because tax money and parasitism is kind of obvious link for a deceptive system. You will sit on you're behind on your chair and wait for jobs from the government, and you will try to not upset the apple cart. So some more of pictures. Here's my friend in active duty. Let's skip around. He finds things like cup marks, and he measures them, and he interprets them. He and I, we find things the archaeologist never saw or never tried to see. And the shapes of these stones are significant and chosen. Maybe if you care to see, it's still visible is kind of a circle feature on this boulder here. And when you walk around and visit these stones, this one is quite neat. Actually, if you would understand, you could make this the image of the sun god representative, how he is depicted in the stone in such a clever way. I would rather prefer to be on the site and do the guided tour about it, or I would sacrifice a week's careful job to make a video presentation of it, because all these stones here, if you visit them and start to spend time with them, you will see so many things they are not just taken raw from nature. They actually do a lot of things with them. And that's a little bit of surprise for some. They will say, well, in Scandinavia 3,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago, did you have stonemasons working there cracking out stones from the mountain, from the ground, and working with them, transporting them, doing no? Well, really? This is maybe something you will not so easily be led to consider it, to think about it. But my experience from spending time, and actually it's a quite enjoyable hobby to learn and spend time with these places, because the men and women, whoever made those monuments, actually, you can quite clearly see a lot of their intentions and their work present in these monuments, and it's quite carefully done, exactly in the image of how a cathedral or a magnificent beautiful church or whatever sacred place you could find, public or religious or spiritual or what you want. If you want to do something nice, you will leave it in there. And after the talk I had last time, I felt like, yes, I checked my notes and I saw I really missed out on the why is it important with the knowledge about the eternal war against the builders and the destroyers, and these ancient monuments we have from our forefathers, to gather and collect and to in a very sacred ritual way protect them. They are actually very much after these sites to destroy them for eternity. If there's anything of value to save, they will straight up steal it and just take it and hide it somewhere. And it's important for us to actually connect much more to to our forefathers and see what's around. I can say let me open my internet browser and just start up my friend Pentikaupala's work. Wow. So I really hide it for myself there. And he has quite some interesting things. And the more he worked, he could see that his own local history around him actually had bonds or connection around the world. So he has some quite amazing remarks, and I cannot find it very easy now, but well, maybe if I'm lucky. Here's a stone still standing today and still cared, like probably in ancient times. It's painted up. It's 3 stones. It's standing in the edge of a field, agriculture field, and it's revered as something. If I'm lucky, maybe I could find document that shows from the moon wheels of the I think if it's Colorado or somewhere America, the Indians, because they will demonstrate they have position stones like spokes of a wheel. They are so-called moon wheels in America from the Indian areas, and still present. Let's see if I could this is just chance by chance if I will find something in a document. Actually, is this? No, I can prepare it for another time to find this document tying to different regions from Pentikaupala's material. That could go to North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and all the ancient. Here will likely be from Africa, I would say. But these monuments here they are all around the world, and they carry the same way. They will map it up as the local order of the world, the seasons, where is the position of the sunrise and sunset of the longest, shortest days, relations to the moon cycle of the 18.6 years. In one of these 18 years, the moon will barely come over the horizon in Scandinavia, and it's marked in many erected stone monuments areas, symbolized as fixed memory in the ground. And also these stones, actually, if you would visit places all around the world and start to spend time with the stones, go check them out, even their Bronze or Stone Age monuments, they more than likely, here's from Scandinavia, they more than likely have made some efforts to design them slightly, and mind you, the work to construct in stone. And I feel certain, I have a certain suspicion that these stones in Bronze Age, even Stone Age in Scandinavia, they have used more modern tools than the archaeologists dare to suggest. I would argue the likelihood, the chance of that they actually used metal toolery to work with these stones. Still, if you have a metal tool to work in a stone, it's not a child's game. That's something really you have to spend all your life to learn it and to come up into mastery. And these monuments are really fascinating to watch. Pentti Kappala has written a very nice document on a topic and involving the moon wheels of the Indians of North America. I'll try to search it up for next time, and we can have it here. And maybe as a reminder, if you have a moon wheel, you will carefully follow time, the most important time for agriculture purposes. And let's put it like this. Here, a moon wheel in North America will have the sections of the moons passing of different constellations in the night sky according to 27 or 29 days, because you have the tides of the rising flood and the ebb of 27 points a fraction days, or you have the full moon to full moon. That's a longer stretch, because the Earth travels whilst the moon travels around Earth, so it has to spend more times to become the same same reflection of the sun compared to the Earth movement. So it's 29.54, I think, days in between full moon to full moon, and all these things is celebrated or cherished in knowledge. For example, here I more than likely suspect 19 markers here and actually, if you could see, here's kind of a shift over the years, maybe symbolized. I would love to spend maybe just 1 year theoretically to dive into these mass imagery, to decode it. And Pentti Kappala, in his material you find on the internet, he actually has spent these 10, 15 years, 20 years together with these rock carvings and interpreted the language message and culture messages in it. And there's most likely mathematical and measure encoded into here as well. These three symbols here, that's almost talking about the past, present, and future, or other kind of styles of imagery in the symbolic language represented here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, the number 4 and 5, something happened here. So that would actually be. How about to suggest that 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? That's the place where you put in the extra day for the leap year, or whatever. You should spend a lot of time studying the imagery, the measures, you actually need to visit this site and make either a laser imagery precise measurement of this stone to have something in a computer sit, but you're actually using your hands and fingers and spending time with it and have your own measure stock here to take up the measures in between. We call measure stock in Swedish. I don't know if I use the correct word in English here. Most likely there will be a precise measurement in between here, defining different things. You would also actually in these locations here find that your finger could match into one little spot, like, well, they will have a definition of here is the place you will measure from, and you will find the corresponding touch over here to find the sacred measures left into it. Maybe if I would flash the double square here, it's kind of it's kind of a neat thing to know about the deeper aspects. You don't want to help me? That's okay. No, he doesn't have full screen. So let's just have him like this. Here is a square. It's the same length of the side of all four sides, and it's a right angle. It's 90 degrees angle in the corners. That's the definition for a square. You put another square next to it, and now the base of the block, the quadrant, or what you say in English, will have 2 on the base, and the height will be 1. Now the cross section here, I should spend some time maybe to actually, well, I will not, but it's quite simple to learn why it's the square root of 5 for the distance across here. Actually, the length of 2 corresponds to a square of 4. So this is actually the root of 4 is the solution for the side here. So the root of 4, and here this side would be the equivalent of, you could have a square of 1 here. So this would be the solution, the root of the 1 squares. And actually 1 plus 4, 1 square plus 4 square, if it's a right angle here, is actually a simple calculation why the diagonal is the square root 5. Now the ratio for the golden section is actually square root 5 plus 1. That's as to flip up this side of the quadrant and align it in the line here of this. Now you have square root 5 plus 1. This simple is it how to because this divided or compared to 2 is the proportion of the sacred golden section, the golden calculation, the way how to get this, and the approximation is 1.618034 something, going on quite a while because it's irrational number. Hey, how about that? Some questions or comments, observations?
Well, I was noticing, like some of this rock art, and a lot of it has line, these line depictions. So do you think lines? See how, yeah. So do you think that means that they were trying to actually, your ancient people were trying to talk in time? Like these are rulers and measurements of time?
You're talking about these lines up here, the symbolism. Is it this image you're thinking, or should we maybe check one of the images?
Well, it was right here, the lines, the sides of the boat.
Yeah.
Looks like a hair comb or a ruler.
Good. Yeah. Sometimes they will name, and my old friend, he's 84 years old, and me, we studied quite a lot of this, and also we read what other people study, both amateurs and professionals. And the comb is something Penticappola will suggest, like this is like a comb, and he will give it an expression, a sound expression. He will make it like a syllable from like hieroglyph syllable symbol, or he would compare it to time. And some will say, like in some images, it's like characters in the story of time. The story of time, for example, it would be nice to go back to, well, maybe so very far away. I'll take just to the top, the one I showed in the beginning here. This image actually is like figures in, and if the shape would symbolize time, that's a quite clever way to see the symbol, because if you enter a ship, or actually all legal structure today is created around ships. So symbology of ship, or symbolism, of course, here is this is not a very high definition picture. So, but here's like images, and that could be like characters of a story connected to what you say, maybe the law you talk about, or the traditions, or the whatever you say in these images. This is like language, or at the same time imagery. So they tell a story, and they shows probably mathematics. This is called crew members in some pictures. They will call it crew members, and that's another. And the lines, I think everything you should think of as many possibilities you can maybe associate them with. There can be parallel meanings, but here this line is going up and making a symbol, and I would suggest this is some meaning you will try to connect to this position. Why are you talking about it? If I gave the suggestion before that this could maybe be the 33 years of a sequence of the sun cycles, that would give position 4 and 5, where you have the unequal day will erupt the system. It will toss the system to not be very precise. So that's where you should start to correct your sun calendar. So that would make it like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 10 and 12. There's a mark for 10 and 12 here. So you will try to maybe study and from other reasoning, make yourself an image of going back to their world and what they would think or use it for.
Well, the thing is, like in America, I haven't really seen petroglyphs like that. So they're more cymatic symbols, sound frequency symbols. They're more of them. More of the stones are, from what I understand, are kind of more like controlling, or trying to balance out different things like energies and weather patterns and all kinds of other stuff. So I haven't seen a lot of ships. I've seen like extraterrestrial type ship things with extraterrestrial type people on a lot of them, but I haven't really seen a lot of boats or ships or anything like that otherwise.
Mm-hmm. The ship is one of the favorite symbolisms around the Scandinavian or Norse culture. So that's something of a local character trait around. But you see the dogs up here. I'm sure you find that in Saudi Arabia, America, around the world. Different images of in this one here we will have this will be an elk, and here is actually time ships and what is happening. And here is in some ancient lore of the so-called gods, that's the imagery of the star constellations. There's called the ship carrier, and this could maybe be the ship carrier on the starry sky depicted, but also other things in connection to counting and things here. In Scandinavia, these rock arts like this one will be named as older farmer Stone Age imagery, but they cannot understand like Pentikaupala Bengt Hamtun. He will actually clearly see that this is exactly like a legal code put forever ruling in the stone. And the rule actually is, as I told before, if we'll go back to the one here, if there is precise measurements cut into the maximum distance of this rock art here is most likely crowned with a special measurement. That's a rule. You have a ruler to measure. So the highest ruler, well, the priest and the king, they only represent the ideas of how we can use the benefit of the best we can do with our skills and talents to survive. If you have nice tools, you can build a nice house to survive. It's more important the house is very good and you have very good tools and it's carefully designed for the local environment. Then it's the king's house or it's the priest's house, because the king and the priest will get no food without farmers running around on his chessboard making lots of nice food. Yes.
So he thought that this kind of thing was like the rule of law.
Absolutely.
So and why? Like what kind of law would it tell him?
Yes, the first law is the time of the season, the year, and what the order of things, how you do it to survive in the era. The law will be like the farmer's almanac. The farmer's almanac is so keen and strong tool, so you should actually give respect for it or grace it as a law, as a something sacred. And in our part of the world, it wasn't too crowded, so the law to have food on the table is much more higher than Hammurabi in Sumer, that will almost make a death penalty for wrong parking in his city or something else, because in his part of the world there were it was circumstance for the amassing of more wealth or resources to control. So they would have, but even Hammurabi is pictured in a stele. A stele is a carefully carved stone statue, and in his lap is carved a ruler, a measure ruler. You could actually go there and get some of the sacred measurements, the sacred rules, and how to construct and build things is probably sacred law. And last time I gave you some links of Bengt Hamtun, Pentikaupala, and some of those were connected to the sacred law or the ancient law of time from before. There are tons of Pentikaupala. He has written frighteningly much. You can actually spend maybe I don't know how long time you could spend only to read it. It will take massive time to read what he presents, but it's quite interesting, and it's quite obvious and clear he thought things through to try to come back to the thinking and the ideas of their time, still present today, but we cannot put our morals or our experience or traditions and frame it backwards in time. But many things like what's up in this side of the image. I don't know if the other one could maybe have some more that would depict law. This one, I will leave this one. This is actually 12 images, and that's kind of law too. You know, our time is law. Time, how we share time in society. This most likely would be the 12 constellations of the starry sky, and that would be either for the celestial sun year, or also for the ages of the sun rests in equinox in a star constellation for 2,000 years. That would be another time counting calendar. I think I had some other. This picture here would be most likely the things you do in this area, and this would be probably the law of that time. Check some of the links I gave you last week, and you all you listening, if you want to check on, and maybe I can make a presentation in one of those programs we'll have in the future here. Of his material. That could be something, since you pick up the interest of it, it's quite interesting. And the basis for ancient rule, I gave you some links of his articles on it, and it's quite interesting to read. It takes some time, and you'll have to dive into Pentecopola's, or Bengt Hamtun's is the same name. He had his Swedish name and Finnish native name, Pentikopola. He present himself as Bengt Hamtun on these web pages because he was living in Sweden, but his native language name was Pentikopola. And it takes some time, and you have to get used to his way of showing the wisdom of the past, because he became quite wise, but not because he was wise, because the wisdom from the past helped him to become wise, and he wanted to understand it. And if he makes himself a friend of wanting to be understanding, he will not try to force understanding that will be many times this maybe not so cleverly matching. It will not be self-evident if you'll try to force something. Like, for instance, the Egypt of the pyramids in Egypt. A lot of Christian scholars went there in the 1800s, and they tried to find a proof of the truth of the Bible and what the Bible says from the pyramids. And that's kind of, you have an agenda in what you want to find. Well, Pentikopola had instead a wish. He didn't have the agenda. Well, the agenda, if so, would be to befriend and to understand their time. And they actually have to build on order and structure to be successful. Especially imagine my parts of the world where sometimes the snow will be free from the ground, and the temperature above 5 degrees Celsius, or when the growing season starts. Some areas here will be maybe as late as in May or something, and already some areas up here in September the growing season is over. In the south part of Scandinavia, you will have a growing season from March to over September, a bit of October. But there's a limited time for us to create what we need for sustaining the strength and the durability of our culture.
Okay, well, do you have any last words before we close it?
Well, of course, I will thank you for inviting me. It has been very nice, and I enjoy spending this time. So I hope it can come to value. And the ideas, the things I try to present, there is an underlying wish and an understanding in myself. These words, they train us to be so stuck with them, to come and to guard, be guardian of my forefathers' wisdoms, and our forefathers of all kin and folk and people all around the world share a lot. We are not similar in all manners and fashions, but we share lots of wisdom. For example, we share the same earth, we share the same universe around us, the same frequencies or cycles of time, and so on. So those will be eternal, self-evident wisdoms of the existence of being on the same planet, at least. But up here, I start to understand how crucial and important it is. We are actually fearing the extinction of Norse and maybe even European culture from the onslaught of the madmen of running and ruling society around the world. So we're actually on the shopping block. Shockingly to understand, but you could never imagine when you were younger that actually that's going on. But now it seems more clear than ever, and it's very important we try to become friends with our forefathers and carry their language, try to get as far back as possible, and share it with our future generations. That will be my final words.
All right. Yeah, we're seeing, I try not to subscribe to either side. I try to stay, kind of in a neutral, but we are, even in the United States, watching the eradication of part of the more newer, United States history. Mm-hmm. So we're watching them getting rid of the whole Confederacy and the South, and because they have to hide the truth. The truth was, it wasn't that the slaves were being emancipated. It was that the government and the powers that be decided to tax the Southerners and then started to take away their land, their money, and their assets. And they fought back. And some of the people who have been doing Tartarian type stuff also, the Civil War was also used in the United States to, bomb and get rid of older buildings that are coming from older civilizations and other types of artifacts. So now we're having the erasing of the Civil War in America by them taking down the statues and getting rid of Confederate flag, and it's pretty crazy actually.
So-called cancel culture, but also that's the deceivers or the destroyers. And
exactly.
There both these teams, the destroyers and the builders, they hide behind the same eternal wisdom language.
Yeah, another thing too is this is the deal. The reason why history repeats itself and it turns out that, a lot of the history is not so good is because the eradication of the understanding of history. So by eradicating any type of history, getting rid of it, we will have less understanding to create something new or build something new. And we'll continue on and create history in the same way that, it had been going on.
In times I've heard the builders understand they have to become so secret because the destroyers are so powerful. So they will actually be as secretive as the destroyers. So in times, but I suggest we should take the passion of being close to the roots of our forefathers and be the strong stem to our future generations from more actively becoming honor persons, also understanding the enemy will always be there. We have to make something like a familiar family tradition, as many as possible of us in our mutual cultures should build up the way, like, well, we should keep a family history. We should maybe know 10 generations.
Even my friend Muwanji Hassan from Uganda, she's a traditional healer. And, he talks a lot about, creating schools for children so that there's cultural appropriate studies as well. So they don't lose their skills and their tools and their abilities, like, growing plants to make colors and dyes and making, materials and things like that from plants. And he even said, they have in his region, they've already lost half of the herbal medicine plants. They're extinct. So if there's no education to carry on their culture, and, it's a big thing in where he's at is that the people, try to, push the children through kind of more Americanized academia so that, when they do go to college, they'll actually leave the country, never really understanding their culture, never understanding their people, never understanding their medicines or their ways or their spirituality. And then they're thrust into other countries and they get an education and they stay in those countries. Meanwhile, never knowing anything. So I think, I think there are a lot of people who these days talk about, and I think people get it messed up. When we're talking about cultural appropriateness, that happens a lot in the native people in America and Canada, is that they have culture appropriate informations and studies, and how all of us kind of need to go back to our history, where we came from, and do a broader study, learn the language, learn the spirituality, learn the ways, and then be able to pass those down.
Well, and learn to protect ourselves, because this man in Uganda, he shares the same with my forefathers of Scandinavia. I mentioned briefly last time, I believe, but we had ancient so-called medicine men or medically schooled in ancient traditions, and they were fiercely fought off by the probably Freemasonic and Jewish systems of owning education, owning the brain.
But you're right.
Sure.
I talk about this kind of stuff with a lot of my Native friends from all over the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are so far away. Your cultures are so far away from that medicine, but we have to really start helping those cultures that are on the fringe of losing what they have now, so they can hold on to it as well.
Sure. And I will be one of those. I will first go to my own culture, and then I will encourage every other culture to do the same. Because I think we even should start to protect ourselves and our children from government schools, and we should enforce locality and distribution of taking care of ourselves regionally and family or village.
But what would be, there's also the point that needs to be made, and why would we take responsibility for, our own local education of our children, is because of culture, and not to mean that one culture is more valuable or more important than the other, but that we can come together better and work on this world coming from a culturally appropriate place, with understanding who we are and our spirituality, and our spirits and our medicines and our plants and all of these, types of things.
Yeah, I've grown up in a society that has been for maybe 150 years so gradually taken away from its natural roots. So it was we swallowed the false team pill so easily, and growing this conscience for everyone else. At the same time, they demolished our culture even more hard, and we have and share so much important stuff, everyone. So we should actually, it's like biodiversity in biology. Well, biodiversity in biology comes from protecting the local biome, or the local niche, or the local local structure of an area. Will give its unique character and the chance for diversity of different activities in a culture.
When you think about food, like there are, America has been involved with, the destruction of other cultures' foods. I mean, what they do is they go in to a country, they occupy that country, they burn whatever their crops are and whatever else, and then they force them to grow crops that Americans like to eat, which are not going to be the crops that those people like to eat. They're not going to be, have anything to do. So one of the things, like, being in the native seed movement, that I think a lot about is growing, diversity would be even growing food and plants and things like that are local to the environment. I mean, that's biodiversity. Otherwise, you have other things that are coming in that are not part of that area and not necessarily don't belong, but are not culturally appropriate to the people. And this is kind of an interesting thing that I learned from somebody that I was doing some work with, and he brought up the point that if you do like genetic testing and you find out that you're 30% we'll say Greek or Portuguese, type people that would have had more fish diets and things of like that nature, right? Because they were kind of more on islands. He said that then you have smaller parts of yourself genetically, but your biggest one is, say, you're Portuguese by 30%. Yes. He said, there is a lot of information and data that supports the fact that if you leave that diet or you're not eating that diet, you're never really going to be healthy because your genetics are predisposed for certain types of foods. And, in my practice, what I found was that I was working with another brilliant immunologist, international immunologist. We had a clinic, and she would have a lot of different patients come in, and she had a big Tongan people following, which are from Polynesia, and some of them would come to see me for what I did, and it became apparent to me, especially with those people, is that they're like 1 and 2 generations away from their island in America. They ate, beautiful fruits off trees. They ate everything off the land, beautiful macadamia nuts. I mean, their skin and their hair are just so glorious and beautiful. But then they come to America and they can't get a pristine diet like that. Even if they try to eat the same things that are imported, they lack food and nutrient. And so what I started to see was that in the Tongan people, they would get disease so rapidly that if they lived and came into America, that they would die by 30 years earlier, and that they went through all kinds of serious health problems. And they were brought here by the Mormon church, they were brought, and most of them in Tonga own land, beautiful, pristine land with all of natural things growing there that they just eat right from their land. But they were lured by religion to America, and they were lured by money. And once they get here, after a bit of time, when they can't kind of get themselves back to how they were living their lifestyle, a lot of them don't have the money to go back.
Sure.
And then it just all falls apart, and you can see, rapid genetic and chromosomal damage to the next generation after they come here. And even the first generation probably will have a 30-year shorter lifespan because they're picking up diseases that would have been cured by the food that they were eating. They're traditional foods because their genetics, their bodies function the best on that. So there's a lot to be said about eating from your area.
Yes, and you bring me the chance to go back to one of the things I wanted to push today, that you say the Americans did, but I tried to paint the picture of the both team uses the same words like America, and in traditional America, like the small farmers America, is something very different than the so-called America running around the world destroying the others. So I think clearly you could see the builders and the destroyers of that picture, and the same names or the same labels are used for it, because every traditional culture around the world is so much they share so much of the basic, very strong, crucial elements to survive in their area, and it will never be running around to other people and trying to hit them in the head and make them do what you do. But that will be the parasite top elite, or the
right. But the word
deceivers.
should be, instead of survive, they're there surviving. They were there thriving before they were occupied. Now they're surviving, barely surviving, before they were thriving in their natural home environments.
let's say my situation, I've been in this system, and I start to connect even in our region from the aspect of law. They called it the great shift from the farmer village to the isolated farmer's own estate. And that happened 1830, from 1850 to 30. And that was one of the first step of the deceiver team coming in, and they probably been there for 1,000 years, establishing hereditary kings or hereditary rulership. There's nothing things as hereditary rulership in traditional culture. So traditional culture they have their king is their tradition. It's not the leader. The leader will be symbolic, and he will actually carry his head as pawn for not deceiving his own. So we are so much alike each other, but almost every culture is so severely hurt and devastated by the deceiving team and their eternal greed for actually laziness. They have this laziness card, and a parasite, he can only stick to his only little trick he has is to fool everyone he's the messiah, but you only have to give him his food and this and that, and maybe he'll leave some for you. But he is your messiah. So now you better believe it, or he have some goons to send and try to make trouble for you. The collection and the sacredness of going, and actually we should try to go back to traditional. We probably have a golden situation right now, like, well, let's shoot crap with this economic system. They're pulling the rug under us anyways, making us poor slaves and beg for well, crazy solutions maybe we should not have. Let's go back and establish farmer villages again, or establish traditions from before, and start to have parallel and fight for protecting the right of a parallel own local system, not tied up by deception of these legal tricksters using things to say, no, you did this and that, now you cannot. Like they went around in Africa and say, like, here, write your names. The interpreters say, write your name. We cannot write so okay, make a cross here. And the cross was equal to, because actually when you and me sign a paper, that's actually what we do. The thing we scribble is deemed as a sign, as a painting, as a picture, as saying nothing, but we believe it says our name. It does not. So it was nice from you you picked up my point there, and you said, well, here in Uganda, and actually I would say the same for Scandinavia, Sweden and Finland, we had ancient sacred medicine men, and they were chased with shame and dirty tricks by the so-called doctors. And now we sit here with people coming out with evidence and information in this so-called COVID crisis. Actual murders is created in hospitals because never leave the position of doctors into the hands of the deceivers, and you will see your own people murdered for nothing, because they created an economic system where they will benefit themselves from
well, that's what we have in America. We have a death system. I mean,
absolutely.
Only in America you have all the things on the stock market. You have your pharmaceuticals, you have all of your transplants for the body, you have your insurance companies, are on the stock market. So that's why, they do the things that they do in the United States in medicine. And one of the things that they do a lot of is euthanizing people towards the end, or if they decide that they've been taking up a hospital bed for too long, they'll actually start giving them morphine, large amounts of morphine, which eventually stops them breathing. And then they'll make it look to their, family members that, oh, well, they're just dying, taking in their last breath, when it's actually done to them by the people in the hospital.
Because they created an economic system that will benefit from the death of others, and actually we should soon not be afraid to do the same. I think deceiver team is quite scared from us. We have such power in our creativity and creation, the skill to create, and they try to scorn us like such an idiot. Look what money we can make out of their things. Let us fool them to give it to us, and we'll make the money. They seldom create anything, but the only thing they would fear is we figure out what they actually do. Behind their words, they do things, action, and they actually fear we would do what they do to us, we would do it to them. And they should know that's actually what we should think about. Never be afraid to honor yourself, know the enemy, the deceivers, the destroyers, and let them know what they do to us, they should fear it comes back to them.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, with that, I'm going to call it game over.
Yeah, call it a day. Maybe some
Yeah, I'm
strong
going to
words from
call
me
it
at
a
the end there.
day.
Yeah.
And anyway, so thanks for the chat today,
You're
Par from
welcome.
Sweden.
Thanks.
And we'll get back together again soon.
Thanks. That will be very nice.
All right. Thanks so much. Uh-huh.